Part 2 of building soils. We're going to continue now with compost teas and foliar sprays. And you could also, use the compost teas as a soil soak. So compost teas are taking compost, and it could be vermicompost, it could be hot compost, it could even be moldering compost. Combining those all good examples of all will have unique consortia of bacteria and fungi and soil life. So they're all good if they're good quality, always. So don't you can master them all. Whatever works for you, you'll get good at it with time. So, and you'll begin to recognize and just be able to see which works and how and what you need to do. And as we explain all the different ways of doing it, you'll see what works for you, and you'll just start doing it. So compost tea, you take that awesome compost and you're putting it into a microperf bag. So it's microperforated and it's going to allow water in, but it's going to prevent the compost from coming out into your solution. So you have a solution that doesn't have those larger particles in it, so that you can spray it on things and it won't clog that if you clean it well afterwards. Remember that, because this stuff makes biofilm. So if you're just leaving it with compost tea in it, the sprayer nozzle, it will start to glue and gum up. Same thing with drip line. But Organics Alive, Todd Salemi will talk about solutions for that. It's absolutely incredible. So you have the microperf bag, you've got your few shovelfuls of awesome compost, and this could be, in just a 5-gallon bucket, or this could be in a 55-gallon barrel. Either way, you're going to want to be proportional with how much you put into it. And, you can only put in what you got. If you don't have any, and you only have a little bit, understanding that it's still going to produce life. It's still going to proliferate, so that's okay. We're going to be watering it down at the end anyway, so don't feel crazy about the amounts. What you got is what you got. The size of container as well. So, and there's the exact science to this, but you'll be able to just do it and see how awesome it is, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even try hard, that was amazing. And then all the stuff that goes into it, all the dialing it in to that next level of unreal, we're going to turn concrete into soil, that can come. But just start. Don't feel held back by the amazing things and having the exact everything. You'll know. First of all, your compost will tell you if it's good or not. It'll smell so good. So when you have perfect compost, you put it in your compost tea, you're having it develop this life, and then you're taking that life, whether it's fungal dominant, whether it's bacterial dominant, and you're spraying it on your plants. You're giving it that armor, you're putting it in the soil life now has that armor and that communication, has all the pieces that it needs to be successful. And so to get fungal dominant, you have to put in fungal foods. And to get bacterial, you put in bacterial foods. So everyone putting molasses in their compost is getting bacterial foods. And if they're converting a pine forest to coniferous old growth forest, which they probably shouldn't try to be converting old growth forest, right? But if they're in a coniferous area, it's got the bark beetle, there's all these problems, all this, and you're wanting to convert it into something better, something more productive, something that's going to sequester more carbon, because that carbon's already standing, it's already done its job. And this is Elaine's situation, right? They've got red dirt, and, it's dirt, she's converting it, and she's doing parts of it, converting it, and parts of it she's not, because she's doing conventional to biological side by side. And so these compost teas are allowing her to make this change in that area. So if you want bacterial dominant teas, because you're going to be putting in a garden with annuals, then you want to push it out of fungal dominant, less acidic, you want it more bacterial dominant, you want it more alkaline, then you would add bacterial food. So you're going to be adding your compost more greens to your compost. Remember, compost, and we'll talk more about detail when we go and do it, but compost is 3 ingredients. It's that manure or heavy nitrogen component. It is that carbon, so that plant after it has gone to seed and it's standing carbon. And it's the plants that have not gone to seed, so it's green. And so those greens are the ones that feed the bacteria. And so they're going to go crazy for that. And obviously the nitrogen powers all the reactions. but it's those greens, the living plants that have still green in them, still have the sugars, still have the nitrogen, that when you harvest, you can dry them down, but it still has all those things in it, and that's really going to feed a bacterial reaction. So you push towards that, then you get the bacterial compost, and then you feed it bacterial foods in situ in the liquid of the compost brewer. And so you're going to aerate from below. You're going to match an aeration that has the power to aerate for that size. So if you're going to do 55-gallon barrel, you're going to have to buy a special aerator. It's probably going to cost like $40 to be able to do that amount of water and do it well. And then I'll be going over that too. I've got a setup as well. And then if you would like it to be fungal dominant, you're going to put fungal foods in there. And so that's chitin. So that is, and that will also feed the bacteria that feeds on chitin. Just don't think it's just going to be fungi alone. So you could put composted frass in there. You could be putting chitin. You could be putting fish emulsion. All these things are going to feed the fungi and going to make it more fungal dominant, so that your perennials and your trees, your food forest, is going to thrive with that compost. And maybe you made that compost out of wood chips. And so it was, manure and wood chips and some greens, but mostly heavy on the carbon, heavy on the wood lignin, so that comes already with the knowledge of wood lignin, of fungi being dominant in the digestive, capacity and profile of that compost. Then you're putting it in. Then you're adding those fungal foods. So essentially at the 2 stages, you have choices. You could be adding that compost directly. You could be making a compost slurry and injecting it, or you could be taking it to the compost tea level. The power of compost tea is your compost goes so much further when you ramp up the life. And the organic matter, when you're done with it, you can put it back into the soil, and that's totally cool. It's awesome. But it's that life in it that is going out now, 1,000 times the amount that you started with, and now is doing the work for you. And you're allowed, it's liquid, so you can spray it and pour it. Don't put it in the drip line because it'll clog it. You put the foods in the drip line for it, and so you spray it on the plants, put it there on the plant itself. The drip line comes in and has the stuff that feeds the biology. And you can get away with a smaller aeration, like a fish tank aerator, for those 5-gallon barrels. And then you want to be really careful about buying stones, because you want it to be something that you can completely clean. You want it to be something that's not going to develop biofilm. Organics Alive is a very special air stone that doesn't get anything on it. It's actually designed so that you can't grow bacteria and fungi on it. You got to keep things clean. That biofilm will start clogging things up. And you want to keep it so, I just did a loop of tubing, of clear tubing, and then put it back on itself. And then I poked holes through that loop so it would come up in an even halo of water. And so I was able to do and then what you have to do so that it doesn't fly up too is you have to put weights on that circle all the way around. So I had weights, and I actually put the loop through them. I think I used washers, giant washers, and I put it through the washers, and so that they would sit like this, and it would be this circle, and then my water would be in there, and my bag would be on the side, and it would just constantly be working. I usually would do 24 to 48 hours depending on the temperatures outside. After 48 hours, it always would go anaerobic for me. But I was in a hot climate. It might be really cold where you're at. You might be doing it outside in the cold. It might be a really slow process. Might not even work. It's so cold. So you got to kind of monitor these things yourself. And how do you do it? The same way with the compost. You look at it. You smell it. You dip your hand in it and smell your hand. So you're always feeding the life at these different stages, the diet that the life needs to express the kind of life you need when you bring it to your soil and your plants. And there are other foliar sprays. You can use certain types of, I think, kaolin clay, where they spray it on the trees and it makes a physical barrier for insects that they can't get through, and it hides the smell of things. So there's a ton of foliar sprays out there. In the biodynamic world, there's even a ton more. But if you do these things, these preps, you will always get a guaranteed result. And that's what's so powerful about the thermophilic, the hot composting methodology, and the compost tea, the actively aerated compost tea methods that Dr. Elaine Ingham has brought to us. All right, and then compost extract. So that's essentially what you're buying in the store when you're buying humic acid, and it's very expensive, and all it is what is leaching out of your compost, and you water it gently, passively, not hard, and it's what's gently weeping out. And so it's that really rich, undiluted, unaerated compost tea, or compost leachate, really.